Good evening, hello there. Welcome to episode 14 of Rugby Nat's Chat Show. You'll be glad to see that the wig I was wearing last week is no longer here, and actually I have eaten a few pies, so back to normal. Sorry about last week. Mike, a lot of feedback from last week. Twitter and Facebook have been quite busy about the various subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very impressed with the opinions that have been expressed about late cancellations and subsequently about second team rugby. And I think there have been some very good ideas that have materialised because of the feedback we've had. Now, I know you've got quite strong views on this late cancellation scenario.
The late cancellation is really mostly around third and fourth team games, to be fair, certainly in my experience. And straightforward financially, the first thing that bugs me is that the example given last week, I think it was a Friday night cancellation down at Midlands 4 or something like that, I think it was. But by then, you've already passed one deadline, which is the 9 o'clock Thursday night, where if you don't cancel the referee, you have to pick the tab up for that. You've probably been to the cash and carry, or your kitchen staff have, or whatever, and you've bought food in. And so you get a last minute cancellation by your visitors, yet as the home team who've got a side and you haven't done anything wrong, you're picking up a tab.
Yeah.
Which I find ludicrous. And we've tried to deal with that in several ways before. We've sent an invoice, especially if we smelt a rat. You know, we've seen a bit of activity earlier on in the week saying that anybody fancy a game because we're struggling or whatever. And it's been met. You know, some people have paid, but it's also a couple of those invoices have been on our bad debtors books for a couple of years. But it's that is ludicrous.
Oh no, I agree with you, and I don't think it's actually just prevalent in third and fourth teams. I mean, we had a personal incident a few weeks ago where our second team were playing a side at home. Again, bought all the food, etc. It was the only side at home, so the bar has to be open. It's revenue, and it's cancelled 9:30 on a Friday night. Now, I think you just really have to have some sort of morals on this, and if you know you're under strength or whatever, you either turn up with what you've got. The second team leagues, you can adapt the regulations so that you could play without a front row, etc. And you can go ahead with the game, but it was just cancelled. The lads then didn't have anything for about 3 weeks because there was no. There were no fixtures arranged. It was the free weekends in their league. So, yeah, I think it's getting commonplace now, and I think we've had some feedback on it. And I mean, one idea I thought was quite good. This was related to second team rugby, about the decline in second team rugby, from Neil Thomas, who feels that some of it is down to travelling. That we need to look at the fixtures and perhaps look to arrange fixtures which are far more local. And I think I said this last week, and I think it is an issue.
I think it's an issue as well, but I think it may have been last season, it might have been the season before. The RFU tried to flatten that fixture pyramid out by making it a bit of a broader base, and they did some juggling with geography. You try saying that's not easy.
Not your age.
Not my age. But they did do that, and it has improved, I have to say, not for our first team, and our first team are at level 7 now, having come down last season. So we still have got some journeys, but our second, third and fourth team, they are a good bit more localised, but it's really quite interesting, and call me a cynic, but when you look at the cancellations in the third or fourth team, some of these teams are starting to get a little bit of a rap sheet for not travelling. Yet they can fulfil home fixtures. It's remarkable.
Well, yeah, that was also brought up by Neil Thomas, and the other thing he said, well, if you actually cancel your away fixture, you still have to pay it on the return. You lose the advantage of
that's actually
home.
A rule.
Yeah, that's within obviously the RFU leagues.
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist in the merit tables.
No, it doesn't.
That is a problem for, say, second team football, where I think you need some sanction. You need some sanction. A couple of people have said fines. Mike Crockwell, £100 fine plus double points deduction. I agree with the double points deduction, but I do agree with James Conner and Chris Reynolds, who all tweeted that it's basically hitting a club that might not necessarily have those finances. So would you see the money? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say actually.
I've got quite strong views on that, because I know from our club's point of view, when sort of midweek, I'll look at the strength of the 4 teams that we run, and I've got a very good dialogue with the 3rd and 4th team captains, and there's always several options, but what I won't do is not play away because we don't have the numbers. That's not fair. With some juggling, you could get there. It may not be a strong team, and you may have people whose selection criteria is vaguely warm and a pulse, but you're fulfilling your fixture, and you're getting the guys game time. But there's a lot of reticence about doing that because it's the league. Well, okay. Well, if that's your argument, should we look at whether 3rd and 4th teams are in the league?
Well, I think you could take that on the second teams as well, because there was there was somebody on Facebook, James Connor, who's saying, look, let's abandon the leagues for the lower team rugby. Let's just play friendlies and perhaps have some sort of cup competition, which would be applicable to a county or a couple of counties. And I don't think that's a bad idea personally. I think that if you go back, the old days, you'd have the first team playing against somebody and it would be reflected through the card.
It's like a club outing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could go back to that. That's 2 at home, 2 away. The fixture secretaries and the clubs themselves know sides of comparable strength, and therefore it could be done. But I think with the leagues, you become totally focused on the regulations relating to the
Mustn't drop points here.
Absolutely, because it is a competitive situation. So I think that could be one solution to it, and it gives people, it gives them their game at the weekend. Most of these games would be a reasonable standard, except you wouldn't be obliged to have a front row on the bench. You might just have your 3 front rows. If somebody goes down, then go on contested scrums, drop a player out. So I think that might be a solution. But at the moment, I think a lot of the lower team rugby, and again I'm putting the emphasis on the second team whilst you're dealing with the 3rds and 4ths, it's going nowhere. It's going nowhere, and it is a problem. And everyone, I think, is struggling. It's not particular to one part of the country.
I do worry about it, and it may be because we just come down from level 6 and we're at level 7, but it may be a bit of a hangover from being at that level. But I do worry a little bit about not having the 2s at a competitive level, because we run a squad situation where theoretically players are bolt in, bolt out, and if they're playing 2 or in our case 3 leagues below the first team, when we need a second team player to come in for injury or holidays or whatever, it can be quite a big step up, and the collisions are harder and faster, and the game is potentially slower. So I get you, and I actually agree with you, but that's with a reservation about the ability to step up those extra leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that about league rugby. There can be differences, quite significant differences between clubs in the same league, and so that can happen anyway. I think with friendlies, if you know the strength of the opposition and you build to get a good fixtures. I've known friendlies now, and have played in friendlies in the past, which have been far more competitive than any league game. A local derby, honour at stake for the locality. All of this sort of thing comes into it, and I don't know whether we actually just go back to that. I mean, moving on to the second team, I looked at one second team merit table, which in the main had National League clubs or regional league clubs in it. Now, there were 13 sides in the league, so 24 matches. At this stage, they've played 60 matches, or should have played 60 matches. 10% of those games have been cancelled, and the game awarded to a particular side.
Home walkover, away walkover.
Is that really solving the situation? I mean, John Wood commented, he feels we've got a generation now who don't want to play second team rugby. They've no patience with it. They feel that they should be in the first team after a couple of weeks, and if they're not, they move on. And he also felt, which I think is quite crucial, but it's going back a few years. It's probably older than you or I, but the idea of
Really?
a social, the social side of rugby, in that you could get your team together, be a little bit of bonding, you'd stand, have a drink at the clubhouse. Well, he makes the point, and I think he's perfectly right.
He's spot on.
The clubhouses are gone 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I know it's a fact of life, and I don't think it's something that we can change. But I do think that we need something to keep those guys together, to stop them becoming nomadic and just wandering from club to club, because in the end they'll get bored with it, and often the result is the same: they don't make the first team.
I think John's made a very good point there, because it's a game to be played on grass, and it's all about friendships and bonding and all the rest of it. But at the same time, most of us are businesses now, and we are feeling that financially. Because the bar takings are considerably down. I mean, it's not that many years ago where people were bang on it until sort of 9-10 o'clock at night, and then but in our case it's a short walk into town, but go on somewhere else and go and
together as a team.
Go and throw a few shapes and upset the bouncers and whatever. But that's diminishing quite quickly. And last weekend, not last weekend, there's no game. Weekend before that, we had 2 teams at home. I got back after the first team game. I was back by about 6:30, 7:15, and there was 2 people in the bar.
Yeah, and it is, and clubs are having to confront those. And it's okay to say, well, open it up. Get 21st birthday parties or whatever, 60th birthday parties in there. That will solve your problem. I don't think it will. Your business is rugby, and I think a rugby club is a rugby club. I mean, I think also Andy Taylor makes the point that he feels there's not enough fixtures for seconds,
really
thirds and fourths. And again, this the merit table that I had a look at. Okay, if you play all your matches, you play 24, but over a season you've got perhaps 30 Saturdays. Okay, take away your 6 nations. Nobody really wants to play around those times, and Christmas. So that number of 24, 25, perhaps 26 games, I think is okay. But you look at some of them, I mean, they're playing perhaps no more than perhaps 20 games over a season. And people drift away. I think they lose interest in it because they don't know it's week in, week out.
And also, with this review of the leagues that's been done, it wasn't so bad when we were at level 6, but now we're at level 7. We've had more weekends off already this season than we virtually did last season altogether. And we've got a game this Saturday, and we don't play again now until the second weekend in January.
Yeah, I was going to raise that with you. I mean, that I just feel that's just unacceptable, really. I mean, what's that? It's 22 games in a year, 22 games in a season.
That's right, yeah.
And I think it's killing the clubs. And something I feel has to be done about it. I mean, I think it's still we've mentioned this before. A lot of it is that guys are drifting away from the game, and it's this 18 to 24 age group for a variety of reasons. Some of it we've just mentioned, and I think we have to confront the problem and try and solve it in some way. I mean, Mike JT, he's made the point, I don't know what you feel about this, let the seconds join the RFU leagues, but no ceiling on them. So it's something that happens actually in Australia, New Zealand, in certain parts of some of their leagues, where there's nothing to stop, for example, Windsor firsts, Windsor seconds, ending up in the same league.
That's actually absolutely taboo now, isn't
Absolutely, you can't do that at all. Now, do we need that? Because again, a lot of the leagues are localised, so it will give us a good second team, a good standard of fixture.
You're giving yourself a bit of work there, because you're going to have to manage the movement of players between those 2 teams. So you're going to have to ring fence. You are a second team player or you are a first team player.
Well, only for your own interest, really. You're not breaking any regulations. As long as the players are registered in terms of the league and members of the club, then they would actually fulfil all of the requirements.
I think the argument about doing away with the leagues for the 3s and the 4s and possibly the 2s, because of all these gaps, because of the unfulfilled fixtures, about the drift because of the lack of commitment or the lack of interest because they get fed up. I think that I've got a feeling this is going to run and run because the passions are quite high around it, and I think that the RFU probably might be quite surprised at this, that the clubs are actually the extent of the discontent.
Well, yeah, I think it's growing and growing and growing, and there doesn't seem to be initiatives addressed at the grassroots level to try and solve these problems. I mean, of course, a number of people who have come back to us have also highlighted how many of these games are coming out with the excuse now, oh, we can't get from there.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
surely,
a catch-all, isn't it?
Yeah, so surely there's ways around that. We just crack on and perhaps play a game. I mean, one idea was that we that the side that is the non-offending side, has the front row, will go to unopposed scrums, but they'll get the scrum put in because that's their advantage as such. Or you could drop a player out, which you would do if you did not have enough front row and lost them through injury. So, yeah, I mean, all of these excuses, are they just excuses?
Or people playing the rules.
Yeah. We'd be very interested to have more of your views. As I said, it was quite exciting and it was very interesting and thought-provoking for you guys to come back to us and offer some suggestions. But I think it's important for our grassroots game of rugby that we solve it.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for watching.
Cheers, thank you.